My mom disappeared at my sister's wedding. Then I found her secret messages, Reddit mystery story. They say weddings bring people together. That for one day all family tensions, old grudges, and quiet rivalries fall away under a blanket of champagne, toasts, and love. That's what we believe too. At least, that's what we told ourselves as we stood in front of the mirror that morning, my sister in her ivory gown and me beside her, pinning her veil with trembling fingers, the scent of roses thick in the air. But none of us could have known what the day would become. How something that started with bells and laughter would end in whispers and sirens. And how my sister's wedding, her perfect day, would be remembered not for her vows or her dress, but for the disappearance of our mother in broad daylight. The venue was a lakeside estate 2 hours outside the city. Picture perfect. Lush green lawns rolled toward the shimmering water, white tents fluttered in the breeze, and guests sipped mimosas under garlands of eucalyptus and baby's breath. Everything had been curated down to the smallest detail. My sister had a clipboard, 4 spreadsheets, and a wedding planner who could rival any military commander in precision. She'd planned this moment since we were kids, since we used to play dress up with bed sheets and pretend her teddy bear was the groom. But as guests arrived and the ceremony drew closer, I started to notice small things. Not wrong, exactly. Just off. Mom wasn't in the bridal suite with us like she said she'd be. She wasn't answering her phone either. Probably just dealing with the florist. My sister said, brushing it off as she adjusted her earrings. You know how she is. Something always needs fixing. True, our mother had a habit of finding fault in perfection, but she was also obsessively punctual, especially when it came to appearances. She wouldn't just vanish. Still, we kept getting ready. I zipped my sister into her gown. The photographer cooed over her like a proud aunt. My heart thudded in my ears, but I forced myself to smile and posed for photos. All the while, I kept checking the door. Waiting. Eventually, the ceremony began, without Mom. My sister walked down the aisle on Dad's arm, radiant, graceful, a living magazine cover. The officiant cleared his throat. People smiled. Cameras clicked. And I stood there, heart sinking, scanning the rows of chairs. Where was she? After the vows, after the rings, after the kiss and the applause, I finally cornered my dad. He seemed distracted, flushed, sweaty. She went to take a call before the ceremony, he said. Said she'd meet us by the garden arbor. I haven't seen her since. I stared at him. That was 2 hours ago. I know, he muttered, eyes darting toward the dance floor. Let's not panic. Let's not panic. But how could we not? I slipped away from the reception as the guests toasted and laughed and clinked glasses. The sky had darkened a bit, clouds curling in from the west. The florist was packing up her van. The caterers were rushing back and forth with trays of hors d'oeuvres, but no one had seen a woman in a silver, blue dress leave. No one had noticed anything strange. I circled the grounds, shoes sinking into the soft earth, calling out for her. I checked the bridal suite, the powder room, the back of the kitchen. I even looked down by the water, where the reeds whispered like secrets. Still nothing. That was when the first sense of dread truly set in. I'm not talking about garden variety worry. I mean that icy, paralyzing kind of fear. The one that grips your spine and whispers, something is terribly wrong. I returned to the tent and pulled my dad aside again. She's not here, I said. She's not anywhere. His face fell, and I saw something flicker in his expression. Not fear, but guilt. What? I asked. What aren't you telling me? He rubbed his face with both hands, then looked at me like a man preparing to be hit. We had a fight, he said quietly. Right before the ceremony. Fight, I hissed. What kind of fight? He hesitated. Then she found something. On my phone. I didn't need to hear more. Not then, because suddenly everything started clicking into place like a jigsaw puzzle I hadn't realized I was working on. The nervous glances. The missing phone. The too quiet bridal suite. Something had happened before the ceremony. Something bad, and whatever it was, our mother had left. Or worse, been made to leave. I told the wedding planner I was feeling ill, made an excuse to vanish into the parking lot, and drove straight into town. I didn't even know what I was looking for. A sign. A trace. Maybe a security camera outside a gas station. Maybe a hotel room with her name on the ledger. Anything to prove she was still somewhere. 3 hours later, I sat alone in my car on the edge of the lake, headlights cutting across the water. The reception was long over. My phone buzzed again and again. Missed calls from my sister, from Dad, from relatives who were all still pretending nothing had gone wrong. Or maybe hoping they could pretend if they ignored the silence long enough. And then I saw it. Parked just off the trail, nearly hidden behind a line of cypress trees, was a car I recognized. Mom's car. I stumbled out of my seat, heart pounding, gravel crunching underfoot. The windows were fogged, the driver's door was unlocked, no one was inside, but the passenger seat held her clutch, her phone, her shoes, as if she'd taken them off and walked barefoot into the woods. But here's the thing. My mother would never walk barefoot, not even in the house. She hated the feeling of grass, hated dirt, hated bugs. So what was she doing out here? Why had she left her things? And most of all, why hadn't anyone noticed she was gone for almost 7 hours? I sat in the car and scrolled through her phone. It was there, plain as day. The last text she'd sent, to an unknown number. Just 1 hour before the ceremony. No message, just a photo, a screenshot actually, of my father's inbox. An email with a subject line that read, confirming our reservation, 2 guests, 1 bed. I don't know how long I stared at it, long enough for my sister to find me anyway. She came barefoot too, her gown trailing through the mud, makeup smeared from tears, her eyes wild and empty at the same time. I know, she said softly, voice cracking. I saw it too. And that's when I realized something I hadn't considered. My sister wasn't just crying because her mother was missing. She was crying because she knew why. And maybe, just maybe, she'd helped her disappear. The car sat like a ghost in the woods, its silver paint catching the moonlight through the trees. My fingers tightened around Mom's phone. The last signal from her in that message was like a whisper trapped in time. I scrolled again, slowly this time. The number she'd sent the email screenshot to wasn't saved in her contacts. No name, no prior messages. Just one exchange of that image, followed 30 seconds later by a single reply. Handle it. Quietly. That was it. 2 words that echoed through my skull louder than the wind hissing through the trees outside. I stared at the number, copied it, and pasted it into my own phone's dialer. My thumb hovered over the call button, but I didn't press it. I couldn't. Not yet. The deeper I fell into this, the more I realized I wasn't sure who I could trust anymore. My sister leaned against the driver's side door, her shoulders trembling. Her wedding dress, once pristine, was now streaked with mud and pine needles. Her hair had come undone from the elegant chignon we'd spent an hour perfecting. She looked like someone who had survived a storm and hadn't realized it yet. You saw it too, I said, my voice rough. She nodded, eyes still fixed on the woods like she expected our mother to emerge barefoot from the shadows at any second. I opened her phone right after the ceremony. She whispered. Once she didn't show up for the photos, I got nervous. She always made a big deal about that, about being in pictures with us. I knew something was wrong, so I used the PN I always knew she used, and I saw the message. You didn't tell anyone. She shook her head. What was I supposed to say? That our mother caught Dad cheating right before the ceremony and vanished into the woods. Her voice cracked. That she might be dead or hiding or kidnapped or God knows what. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was thick, heavy, the kind that clings to your skin like smoke. She wouldn't just leave, I said. She wouldn't walk off barefoot into the trees and leave her purse and her phone. That doesn't make sense. I know. But someone wanted it to look like she did. She turned toward me slowly, and I saw something in her eyes that made my blood run cold. She didn't look confused anymore. She looked terrified. You think Dad did something, she said, not asking, stating. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. There had always been something brittle about our father's smile, something forced. When we were kids, we thought he was just tired. Work stress, the weight of paying bills, dealing with deadlines, having a house full of strong-willed women. But the older I got, the more I saw it for what it was. Control, masked under charm, camouflaged by responsibility. He wasn't the kind of man who exploded. He was the kind who simmered, who measured out his anger like medicine. Just enough to remind you who had the power. And Mom had always tiptoed around him, especially when she had something to say he wouldn't like. I remembered the bruise she said came from slipping on the stairs, the way she'd changed the locks last winter, saying it was just for safety. And now this message. Handle it. Quietly. We called the police just before dawn. They took our statements, marked the car with yellow tape, and started the process of turning the venue's beautiful wooded edge into a crime scene. The reception tent was still lit up. Garlands of fairy lights glowing soft gold. A few drunk stragglers hadn't realized what was happening. One of them tried to flirt with a cop. I watched it all from a distance, wrapped in a blanket, feeling like I was underwater. Dad stood near the edge of the scene, arms crossed. His tie had been loosened, his jacket off. When they found the car, he didn't say a word. When they asked him questions, he gave clipped, polite answers. I haven't seen my wife since 2 p.m. No, I don't recognize that number. Wes, we argued, but nothing serious. But I was watching him too closely now. I saw the twitch in his jaw every time they said, missing person. I saw how he kept checking his phone. Not out of worry, but as if he were expecting someone to call, or warn him, or confirm something had been taken care of by him. They started a formal search. Dogs, flashlights, officers in lines, combing the forest like it was a crime show. I overheard one officer say, no footprints, no sign of struggle, no blood, which should have been good news, but it only made me feel worse, because that meant she was either very good at disappearing, or someone had helped her vanish completely. I tried calling the number again. Blocked. I tried searching it online. No results. By midday, the media had caught wind of it. Mother of the bride missing from lavish wedding. Helicopters buzzed overhead. The wedding planner tried to get ahead of it, posting vague statements on social media about a family emergency. But the comments were already out of control. People speculating, blaming, creating entire conspiracy theories. I read one that said mom had faked her disappearance for attention. Another claimed she was a secret addict. It made me sick. So I stopped reading and focused on the one thing I could still control, the phone. Mom's messages were a maze. She had dozens of book clubs with book neighbors, alumni from her college. She messaged relatives in 3 different countries. But one thread stood out. It was buried in a folder she'd named PR Vieto, and it was locked. At first, I thought I'd need a password to open it. But when I tapped it, it asked for Face ID. And when that failed, it asked for a fallback code. I sat in the back seat of my car and closed my eyes, thinking. Mom's favorite number had always been 1989. The year she and Dad met. I tried that. It worked. Inside was a single message chain with a contact saved under M. There were only a few messages, but each one made my stomach twist. M-Tree, he's planning something. I can feel it. M-Tree, if anything happens, look in the black book in the closet. Behind the lining. M, don't trust him. He's not who you think. The last message was dated 3 days before the wedding. I drove home that night. I don't know what I told the police. Something vague about exhaustion, but I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever had warned about, it was real, and it was still out there. Our house was dark, silent, too clean. I went straight to the master bedroom closet. I remembered the lining she'd had replaced last spring. She told us it was for moth damage. But as I pulled it back, I saw the thin slit near the corner. Inside, wrapped in a silk scarf, was a black leather-bound notebook. It wasn't a diary, it was a dossier. Names, transactions, photos, and something else, a memory card taped to the inside cover. I sat down on the bedroom floor, plugged the card into my laptop, and watched. The footage was grainy but clear enough. Our father, in a hotel room, with a woman I didn't recognize. And worse, him handing her a sealed envelope. Her counting cash, and then a name spoken aloud. The same name that had signed the wedding venue contract. She wasn't just his mistress. She was part of something bigger. And our mother had uncovered it all. I felt the shift then, deep inside me. A gear turning, a thread pulling tight. She hadn't just disappeared. She'd been silenced. Or she'd gone into hiding to escape something even darker than we imagined. And the only clue she left behind was me. I couldn't stop thinking about the silver pin. At first glance, it had seemed like a harmless accessory. Part of the formal dress code, maybe something the venue staff wore for uniformity. But now, after watching Mom's final video, it became something else entirely. A marker, a signal, and the more I replayed the wedding in my mind, the more I realized how many people had been wearing one. Not just Dad, not just Leela with the tattoo. The officiant had one clipped neatly to his tie. The caterer, even the DJ had something shiny on his lapel. I'd thought it was coincidence, some sort of thematic coordination. But now it felt like a uniform, a membership badge, and suddenly the entire wedding took on a new shape. Not a celebration, but a gathering, an operation, a performance staged to look like love, while underneath it something colder had been orchestrated. Jake and my sister sat beside me in silence as we decoded the files Mom had left behind. Each one was worse than the last. Green Lake Holdings wasn't just a shell company. It was one of dozens. An entire network of financial conduits linked to foreign accounts, dummy vendors, and charities that existed only on paper. There were scanned checks, forged invoices, contracts with names that didn't trace to real people. And woven into it all were wedding receipts, floral orders, cake tastings, luxury chairs, photography packages. Every item a vehicle to move money, weddings, Dozens of them, all over the country. And ours had been just another node in the system. Only Mom had started asking questions, digging too deep. And for that, she'd had to vanish. She wasn't running from us. She was running from them. These pins, Jake muttered, zooming in on a photo from one of the folders. They're always there, every event, same shape, same shine. I think they're a form of ID, maybe even embedded with something like tracking. I asked. RF'd, he said. Wouldn't be hard. If they're coordinating movement, it'd help them keep tabs on who's where, who's clean, who isn't. My sister's hand shook slightly as she pressed play on another video. This one was taken from a phone, probably by Mom. It showed a meeting in a hotel conference room. 4 people sitting around a long table, their faces mostly obscured. But the audio was clear. We can't keep using the catering firms. It's getting sloppy, a woman's voice said. Then switch to foundation donations. Run them through the Shell in Zurich, a man replied. What about the wedding next week? Another voice asked. Handled. Groom's side's clean, bride's family. Under observation. The date of the video. 2 weeks before my sister's wedding. The bile rose in my throat. They'd been watching us. Evaluating. Deciding who could be used and who needed to be managed. I tried to remember every strange moment leading up to the wedding. The unexpected photographer change. The way Mom insisted on reviewing every invoice. The often comment from the planner about needing our guest list 3 times over. It had all felt like wedding chaos. But now it looked like surveillance. We need to go to the drop, Jake said. That location your mom gave in the video. It might be our only shot at finding her. Or someone who can lead us to her. Or it might be a trap, my sister said. She said not to trust anyone with the pin. Exactly, Jake said. So we don't go in blind. We watch first. We see who shows up. The coordinates led to an abandoned greenhouse 2 hours outside the city. We drove there the next day just before dawn, staying hidden in the trees, watching the broken structure from a distance. It looked like it hadn't been used in decades. Panes of glass shattered, vines crawling through the roof, iron frames rusting into the ground. But someone had been there recently. The padlock was new. The gravel near the entrance had fresh tire marks. We waited. At exactly 6:00 a.m., a figure appeared at the tree line. A woman, wearing hiking boots, jeans, a hooded jacket, no silver pin. She approached the greenhouse carefully, checked the lock, and removed something from under a nearby stone, a flash drive. She slipped it into her pocket and turned. Jake was already moving. Wait, I hissed. We don't know who she is. But she knows where to look, he said. He approached her slowly, hands visible. We're friends of the woman who left that drive, he said quietly. The woman froze. Her hand reached into her jacket like she had something there. A weapon, maybe. But then she relaxed. Code word, she asked. Jake hesitated, then glanced at me. I stepped forward. Marigold. She studied us for a moment, then nodded. She said you'd come. The woman whispered. She said if anything happened, to make sure you got the next part. She handed us the flash drive. But be careful. They're closing in. They know she's alive. Is she safe? I asked. The woman's eyes darkened. For now. But not for long. And if they find out she left the drive behind. Her voice trailed off. The implication was clear. We thanked her and left quickly, retracing our path out of the woods before anyone could follow. In the car, we plugged in the flash drive. It was heavily encrypted, but Mom had left behind the key in the notebook's final page, a string of dates, numbers, and flower names. It unlocked everything: photos, names, meeting logs, voice memos, evidence tying Green Lake to a network of high-level figures, investors, public officials, even law enforcement. And in the center of it all, listed not as a minor player, but as a facilitator, was our father. His name was everywhere. Authorized signatory, logistics coordinator, consultant. In one memo, someone referred to him as the filter, the person who ensured that only clean money flowed through public events, the man who made the system look legitimate, the man Mom married, the man we'd all trusted. My hands trembled as I closed the laptop. There was no denying it anymore. He hadn't just been cheating on our mother. He'd been cheating reality, helping build a network that used life's happiest days as camouflage for criminal finance. And when Mom got too close, they either tried to scare her off, or worst. My phone buzzed. An unknown number, one-word text. Stop. Then another, final warning. I showed Jake. He didn't hesitate. We're out of time, he said. We'll leak it now. Everything. What about Mom? I asked. If we go public. She told us to finish what she started. What if they find her first? Then we make sure it's too late to stop us. Jake uploaded the files to 3 separate servers, sent them to journalists, watchdog organizations, anonymous tips. We created digital dead man switches to ensure the data kept circulating. And then we waited. The fallout began within hours. News reports, leaks, arrests. Names dropped in quick succession. But Dad, he disappeared. Walked out of the house that evening and never came back. His phone pinged once near the airport, then silence. The last footage of him was from a gas station security camera, buying water and a map. No silver pin, no bags. Just his face, tight with tension, eyes scanning the distance like a man already being hunted. We didn't know where he went. We didn't know who he ran from. But we knew this wasn't over. Because somewhere, in the shadows of all this exposure, the people with the silver pins were still watching, still planning. And Mom, wherever she was still alive. We had her words, her files, her trust. And now we had something else. The responsibility to finish it all. To burn their system down from the inside. And it all began on what was supposed to be the happiest day of our lives. The day our mother disappeared. The day we woke up. They thought the storm had passed after the leaks, after the headlines, after names were named and faces flashed across screens. But I knew better. I felt it in the way the air shifted when I walked past our front door, in the silence between car engines idling outside and disappearing before dawn. In the stiffness of every smile from people who claimed they were just checking in, just seeing how we were holding up. Because this wasn't over, not even close. It had simply gone quiet, and quiet was always worse. Because quiet meant they were watching, adapting, rebuilding, and I could feel it every time I opened Mom's notebook or scrolled through the encrypted files she'd left behind like breadcrumbs for a scavenger hunt, with no clear finish line, only danger waiting at every turn. And then the letter arrived, tucked not in an envelope, but folded into a page of a gardening magazine we never subscribed to, sitting on our porch like an afterthought, and inside, typed in perfect black ink on heavy paper, were just a few chilling words. You've made noise. We respect that. But noise attracts attention. And some things buried should stay buried. If you want her alive, stop. And that was the moment everything sharpened. The air, the light, the fear in my sister's eyes when I read it aloud, and the calm way Jake took the paper from my hand and began scanning it for prints, for watermarks, for any trace at all. But it was clean, professionally clean. And I knew then that whoever had sent it wasn't bluffing. They were professionals, which meant we were dealing with something larger than just a corrupt shell company. We were entangled in something organized, something disciplined, something dangerous. And I knew Mom was still alive, because this wasn't a threat meant to break us. It was leverage, proof that they still held a card we couldn't afford to lose. And I wasn't going to stop, not now, not when we were this deep, not when every clue she left was guiding us closer to something more terrifying and more complete than I'd ever imagined. So we kept going, kept digging, kept tracing names and companies and numbers. And that's when we found the name Celestia, scribbled lightly in the margin of the second to last page of Mom's notebook, nearly invisible unless you held the paper against the light. And that single word sent us spiraling down a new rabbit hole, one that led to old investigative forums, rumors, digital ghost stories about someone who wasn't a hacker or a spy but something in between, someone who helped people disappear from both sides of the law, a myth called Celestia. And as ridiculous as it sounded, the more we searched, the more patterns we found. Disappearances that coincided with corruption exposures, hidden caches of leaked documents that no one ever took credit for, and one old post from a user named Glasshouse that simply said, "If you ever find yourself stuck between two dirty governments, don't go to the cops. Look for Celestia. If she finds you, you live." And suddenly, I wasn't so sure it was fiction anymore, especially when Jake got an encrypted email with no sender, no subject, just a link to a private server that asked for a password. And we tried everything until my sister remembered, Marigold, and the server opened to a single window, grainy video footage of a small cement room, a cot, a woman with longer hair and tired eyes sitting in the corner, looking directly into the camera as if she knew we were watching, as if she had been waiting for this moment, and then the screen went black and a countdown appeared. 72200 Oak, ticking down by the second. And that's when we realized this wasn't over. This was the next phase, and they were testing us, pushing us, seeing if we'd break or follow the trail, and we followed it, all the way to a warehouse in northern Michigan, one of Green Lake's last remaining data centers, where we found the room from the video, only it was empty, abandoned just minutes before we arrived, and on the cot was another note. "You're learning." And that was the confirmation we needed. She had been there, and they knew we were coming, and they were watching to see how far we'd go, how much we'd risk. And we didn't stop, we couldn't, because every step deeper into this maze wasn't just about finding Mom anymore. It was about exposing a system so intricate it used weddings, funerals, public charities, even high school fundraisers to move money, buy silence, and destroy anyone who got too close. And we were close now, close enough to get another message, this time handwritten. You want her back. Celestia is watching. Keep playing. You're not done yet. And that was the final push, the moment the fear inside me crystallized into something colder, harder, a resolve I hadn't felt before. Because now I understood this wasn't just our family's story. This was a war, and we were in the middle of it, like it or not. They thought we'd back down, that the timer would break us, that we'd panic, scramble, and make mistakes, that the promise of her life, still somewhere out there, would be enough to twist our choices and turn us into just another silence they could buy. But they didn't know what Mom had taught us. Not the sweet lessons, not the ones about manners or how to write a thank you note. No, the real lessons, the ones she lived quietly. That control isn't power, truth is. That fear can be sharpened into focus, that people underestimate daughters. Especially when those daughters have everything to lose. The clock was at 15 hours when Jake cracked the last PISA, a data tunnel buried in a GreenLake backup node, disguised as a weather API. It had been running for months, unnoticed, shuttling fragments of video files, voice memos to a destination that didn't show up on any map, an island, technically a research facility, off the coast of British Columbia. Remote, secure, quiet. And if Mom was anywhere, she was there. We didn't hesitate. We flew under aliases, using documents Jake had been stockpiling for this exact kind of situation. My sister and I wore hair colors we'd never touched before. We spoke only when needed. We didn't stay in hotels twice. When we landed, a man with a crooked smile and a faded tattoo on his wrist picked us up in an old Jeep with missing plates. Celestia sent me, he said without blinking, and we believed him. The road was rough, unpaved, a path not used often. No signs. No lights, just tall trees and that feeling again like being watched. But this time not with malice, with precision. We arrived at a cabin near the cliffs surrounded by mist. Inside, maps were pinned to the walls. Red lines, timelines, surveillance photos of weddings like ours, like dozens of others. She knew this would happen, the man said. She planned for it. You were never supposed to find her, only the truth. But then your father ran. That name, that word, felt like poison. I hadn't said it aloud since the night he vanished. The man handed us a hard drive, her final dump. Every transaction, every name. If it goes public, the whole network collapses. All of it. But once you send it out, she's gone. You won't get her back. They'll vanish her for real this time. My sister's breath caught. So we choose. No, I said. She already chose. She gave it to us. We took the drive and he handed us a satellite phone. If you want to see her, you have 6 hours. They're making a trade, one of their own, for her. You'll find them at the docks. But you'll have to watch. You can't interfere. If you do, deal's off. The air felt too tight. 6 hours to choose between justice and family, between fire and memory, between her freedom and the collapse of the empire she died trying to expose. We drove. The docks were lit dimly, a single overhead lamp swaying in the wind. A boat bobbed quietly. A man stood beside it, talking into a phone. Another figure, hooded, hands bound, stood between two guards, and even before the wind lifted the hood, I knew it was her. I knew by the way she stood. Proud, even in chains. I wanted to scream. Run. Do something. But Jake's hand tightened on my arm. And then, slowly, the man on the phone nodded. One of the guards stepped forward, sliced the ties from her wrists, and handed her a phone. She didn't speak. She just walked to the edge of the dock, stood still for a moment like she was listening to something we couldn't hear, and then she turned toward the sea. They let her go. Just like that. The boat left with the man they traded, one monster for a woman who never stopped fighting them. But it wasn't the end, because when we got back to the cabin, another message was waiting on the satellite phone. No text, just a video. Her face. Bruised, tired, but alive. You did it, she said. And now it's your turn. Burn it all. Don't look for me again. And then static. She was gone. Not dead, just gone. The next day we uploaded the drive. Every news outlet, every watchdog, every data repository. Names fell like dominoes. Senators, judges, executives, men and women in crisp suits who had laughed their way through decades of blood money and thought no one would ever trace it back to something as beautiful as a wedding. But we did. The system collapsed. And with it, the silence. But still she didn't come back. Not on my birthday. Not on hers. The house stayed empty, her room untouched, the marigolds in the garden blooming without anyone to water them. People called us whistleblowers, heroes, survivors, but we were just daughters. We didn't want the spotlight, we wanted mom. But maybe in some way we had her. In the choices she left behind. In the war she started. In the quiet she filled with secrets until we turned them into truth. And sometimes when the wind blows just right through the trees, when I hear the sea in my dreams or smell jasmine on a stranger's scarf, I feel her. Watching. Proud. Somewhere safe. Somewhere named Celestia. Enjoyed the video? Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you never miss an update.